Music theory with Microsoft Excel. Scales built by interval or modal distance, comparing and contrasting the minor modes, and we're throwing in the Locrian mode as well. The minor modes including the Aeolian mode, which is the minor scale, the Dorian mode, and the Phrygian mode. So get ready and some coffee, because you ain't never seen rockin' unless you excel at rockin', and that's what we do here with Microsoft Excel. We are in Excel. If you don't have access to this workbook, that's okay, because we basically built this from a blank worksheet but started in a prior presentation. So if you want to build this entire worksheet from a blank sheet, you could begin back there, or just build the part of the worksheet that we're currently working on. If you do have access to this workbook, though, 4 tabs down below, we've got the fretboard tab. Having a simulated fretboard, we will refer to the example tab, in essence, the answer key. The practice tab has pre-formatted cells, so you can practice the practice problem with less Excel formatting. But if you don't have any of that, that's okay, because we'll be working in the blank tab, where we started from scratch with a blank worksheet, and we'll continue to work, in essence, in the blank part of the worksheet, practicing our Excel formatting skills for formatting's sake, as well as our music skills at the same time. Let's go on over to the fretboard tab to get a reminder of what we want to be visualizing, wanting to look at these distances, compare the distances, be able to know what the flavor is as we look at these intervals, but also see them within the context, not throwing us off from the optimal way to visualize the fretboard, which is as a map of the territory. 7 destination locations on it. We have 5 non-destination locations, which are like the oceans. We're going to be above this planet of the fretboard, with our head above this low or heavy E string, visualizing it rotating around like the planet rotates around 12 degrees of rotation. We assign 1 degree of rotation to be working in, typically choosing the 4th degree of rotation, which we call the collection of 7 notes, 7 continents around the C major. Remembering that I could shift it up to C sharp, to D sharp, doesn't matter, because all the intervals are going to be the same. All the continents will be positioned the same once we go on to the actual planet. And therefore, we want to now be measuring distances, which we can do on the guitar, in essence, 3 different ways. You can do it on any instrument, basically 3 ways. That being, we visualize what the relationship looks like. We learn chords in open position, and then we move those chords up the fretboard, particularly open or bar chords up the fretboard, and we learn those positions. Or we break the fretboard into 5 different positions, and we learn those, and so on and so forth. That's great, but we'd also like to be able to build the shape possibly with the formula, meaning I could start here and go, from here it's a whole, half, whole, half. But to do that on a guitar, it's a little more difficult, because I have to see the distances between strings, which is a good practice to do as well. But what's possibly more useful is to build the same shape by interval or distances from a particular point, kind of like a compass drawing a circle. We put the point of the compass here, and we draw the shape around it by using the distances that are going to be going from that shape. Remembering that we usually think about this first off, at least, and the major scale, which is the Ionian mode. But we can do it from any other point and draw the same shape. It's the same shape from any other point. So that means that it's the same continents. Where I have the same continents here that we're working with. I don't want to rename the continents. So in other words, if I'm going from this C and I go up 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 notes forward, the question is, what if I started from the G and I went up 4, 1, 2, 3, 4? Do I land on a continent or not? Those are the questions. Now, the distances are going to give us a flavor. So if I say something is 4 notes away, we usually think of that as a major third. It's not really the major thing that should tell you. We should be replacing the major with the 4 notes away. It's a 4 note away, 3rd scale degree, or 2nd modal half step. That's the thing that should be telling you the flavor. The distance should tell us the flavor. And we're trained not to kind of see it that way, but we kind of should, right? If I go 4 up here, we hit a continent. All right, so that's going to be the idea. So the question is, from each of these continents, if I compare them and I take the same number of steps, like a pirate starting from a tree and then starting from the other tree or whatnot, and I take the same number of steps, does it land me in the ocean? Does it put me in a pit? Or does it get me to the treasure or at least some other land mass? Do I not go into the lava, right? And then we can compare how many steps we can take. And we can measure them two different ways. Modal half steps, which is kind of similar to scale degrees, which is just measuring off by 1, and notes away. All right. Let's go over to the blank tab. We started off listing our 12 notes in the musical alphabet, counting out the key that we're going to work in, the collection of 7, by applying the formula whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step to get back home. Here's our 7 notes that we're going to be working in. We named them modally, and we also named them with the Nashville number system, 1 through 7. We then listed we listed the normal intervals, of which there are 11 if you start from any point within 1 octave going clockwise. And then we wanted to compare them, each of the points that we start on the 7 continents, how many steps we can take that will actually land us on a land mass. So we can compare that 2 ways. We can use scale degrees or modal distances. So that's why we get this scale degree term, 1 through 7. That's not really the best way to do it because it forces you to think of the thing you're on, the landmass you're on, as the 1, even if it's not the Ionian, which is a problem because you get into this renaming situation. What you should be saying is I'm measuring from whatever node I'm on, whether it be the Ionian, the Mixolydian, the Lydian, or whatnot. So that means it's all off by 1. We did the Ionian, which is going to be our major scale, comparing all of if you start on the Ionian and you go to you make a compass, you go around in a circle or make the scale from that point going forward, in this case clockwise, but we'll go counterclockwise later. Then it's going to be ID, ID, IP, IY, IX, IA, IN, or 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, 1, 6, right? And then we measured the distance, and we gave the scale degrees using the normal terminology and then using the more precise modal distance terminology. And then we compared the Lydian and the Mixolydian, doing the same thing, noting that if you compare the 2 majors to the major mode, they only have 1 interval distance. So that's what's nice to learn. That's the way to kind of learn this. We can say, okay, if I look at the distances from the major, the Ionian, then the other 2 that have a major third distance are the Lydian and the Mixolydian, and they are very close in distance to the Ionian. They only have 1 interval distance. So with the Lydian, if I go 6 steps out, I land on a landmass, which is weird, right? And on the Mixolydian, I can go 10 steps out instead of 11 and land on a landmass. Now we're going to compare the Aeolian mode. So the Aeolian is the one that's kind of supposed to be like the most different than the Ionian. It's kind of like the opposite, although the Phrygian is possibly the most different, even the Locrian, but it's kind of too different. It's weird. So let's start by copying this over. I'm going to take this. I'm going to copy it over to the end. So I'm going to copy this. Let's see if I could do the whole thing again. I couldn't do it last time. Let's do it up to here because that will save me not having to change the size of the cells. Yeah, that works. All right. Now, I'm actually going to make this one orange this time. I'm going to make it orange because this is that's orange and black, I guess. Why is the lettering white? Make it black. I told you to make it black. Okay. And then we'll do the same thing over here because these are going to be the main ones that we compare to. So I'm going to try to get my color scheme down. Okay. So now we've got this one. So I'm going to say this is going to be equal to, and we'll pick up the Aeolian. All right. This is the minor that's the most popular minor. Let's compare it then to the major. So let's hide some stuff until we get to the major. Let's go like from the Y on over to the AP, right click and hide. And let's just do our comparison for the 2 main, major, main, major, and the main minor. Okay, so we have, so then I need to change the minor here. This needs to be a 6. So if I change that to a 6, everything else should change. We did that last time. I won't go over the formulas again, but if you want to type it out, you can type it out. We did some fancy formulas so we can copy it over in a prior presentation, so I won't go through that in detail again, but just note it works beautifully. Look at that. You just copy it over and change one little thing, and the whole thing just populates. It's amazing. It's amazing. So anyways, if we're going from the Aeolian node, what are the ranges? What are the continents we can go to? I'm not worried about landing in the ocean. I'm saying, what are the distances I can do to get to the other continents so that I don't land in the ocean? I'm a normal person on vacation. I like to vacation to all the continents, not to the middle of the ocean. All right. If it's a cruise, I get it. But no, we're going to the continents. So we can go an AA, which is 6 to 6 from a modal range standpoint, an AN, which is Aeolian to Locrian, which is a 6-7. We can go an AI, which is 6 to 1, because there's only 7 continents and they go around in a circle. We go around the block. All the continents are in a circle. So we go around the block. And then we've got an AD, which is a 6-2. We got an AP, which is a 6-3 modal range. We've got an AY, Aeolian Lydian, which is a 6-4 modal range. And we got an AX, Aeolian Mixolydian, which is a 6-5 modal range. Okay, well, what's the distance? Like over here, we had an II. So if I go I to I didn't go anywhere. So we start, so that's going to be 0 half steps. It's the first scale degree, 0 half steps in notes. So if I go 6 to 6, obviously that's the same. We're going to go 0 half steps. It's going to be the first scale degree because the scale degrees are all off by 1. And the note half steps are also 0, which we conventionally call a 0 note away, or people usually don't say 0. I say 0 note away, perfect first. I'd like to call it a 0 note away from the Aeolian node, 0th modal half step, right? And then if I went the next one, which would be the second scale degree, or the first modal distance from a modal distance perspective, would be an ID modal range from the Ionian, which would be a 1 modal half step away, which would be the second scale degree, and it has 2 note half steps. We call that a 2 note away then. I call it a 2 note away. Major second. That's what most people call it, major second. I'd like to call it a 2 note away from the Ionian node, first modal half step. Comparing that to the Aeolian, that would be an AN modal range, to take 1 step forward from a modal half step, or a 6-7 modal range, which would be a distance of 1 modal half step. It would be a scale degree of the second, and it would also be a 2 note away minor second. That's the weird one, because you would think from the normal naming convention, it would be a minor second. It's a major second. You would think it would be a minor second. Hopefully I got that right again. I keep on messing that up. But it's not, because again, the way this was designed was that the major was anything that fits into the major, and if it didn't, they were going to make it minor, and then it got complex because they had to throw in the perfects, which messed everything up even further. So this one it's still a major second, which is in the main minor, the Aeolian, which is the minor scale. But I'd like to call it a 2 note away from the Aeolian node, first modal half step. What if I go to the third scale degree, which is the second modal distance, modal half step? That would be a YP modal range, a 1-3 from the Ionian. It would be 2 modal half steps up, which would be the third scale degree, which would be it has 4 note half steps. We call that a 4 note away. I do 4 major third. I'd like to call it a 4 note away from the Ionian node, second modal half step. If I go from the Aeolian and we go two nodes up, it would be AI going around the circle. There'd be a 6-1 modal range. So it has 2 modal half steps up because we go 6-7 and then to 1 as it goes around. It would be the third scale degree. And the note half steps are 3 instead of 4. That's the main one. It's the third. So if there's a third, or the second modal half step, which is the third scale degree, that has 3 notes up that land you on a continent instead of 4 notes up that land you on a continent, that's the thing that tells you that it's traditionally a minor mode instead of a major mode, right? That's the important interval. So we call that a 3-note away minor third, which I'd like to call a 3-note away Aeolian second modal half step. All right, what if we go for the 4th scale degree, which is a modal distance of 3? From the Ionian, we go from the Ionian up 3 to the Lydian, which would be a 1-4 modal range. It has a distance of 3 modal half steps up, 4th scale degree. It would be the 5-note distance. We call that a 5-note away perfect 4th. I'd like to call it a 5-note away from the Ionian node 3rd modal half step. If I start on the Aeolian and I go up I go up 3, I get to the Dorian. That's a 6-2 because it's 6-7, 1-2, 3. So it's a modal half steps of 3. Scale degree is 4. Note half step is 5. And it's still a 5-note away perfect 4th. Now the perfects you can kind of see as though they're going to be in the major and the minor usually. But that's not, again, it's not the P that should be telling you that. It's the 5. The 5-note, if you drop the P and said it was a 5-note away 4th scale degree, that would be a better name because it would be just as short, right? But anyways, I'd like to call it a 5-note away from the Aeolian node 3rd modal half step. So then we go the 5th scale degree, and it would be a modal distance of 4, going from the Ionian, that would be 4 up to the Mixolydian. That would be a 1-4 modal range. 4th modal half step up from the Ionian, 5th scale degree. Note half steps would be 7 distance. We call that a 7-note away perfect 5th. I'd like to call it a 7-note away from the Ionian 4th modal half step. If we go from the Aeolian up by 4, we get to the Phrygian, 6-4 modal range because it goes 6-3, 6-7, 1, 2, 3, a distance of 4. If we go clockwise, it would be a 5 scale degree, 5th scale degree, a distance of 7. We would still call that a 7-note away perfect 5th. But remember, the perfect doesn't really tell you if you dropped the P and added the 7, that would be a better name, a 7-note away 5th. Right? All right, but I'd rather call it a 7-note away from the node we're on, Aeolian, 4th modal half step. Okay, and then if we go to the 6th scale degree, then, or the 5th modal distance, that would be an I up 5 modal half steps to the Aeolian, Ionian to Aeolian, which is a 1-6 modal range. So we would be going up modal half steps of 5. Scale degree is 6. Note half steps would be 9. So we call that a 9-note away major 6. I'd like to call it a 9-note away from the Ionian node 5th modal half step. If we go 5 up from the Aeolian node, we get to the Lydian node. That's going to be a 6-4 modal range going clockwise, 6-7, 1, 2, 3, 4, which is 5 modal half steps forward. 6th scale degree. Note half steps are 8. So now it's different, right? It's down by 1 versus 9. So we call that an 8-note away minor 6. But I'd rather call it an 8-note away from the Aeolian node 5th modal half step. Remember, the 6th, the minor doesn't really tell us anything if you have the 8. The 8 is the thing that tells us, oh, it's 8 notes away. If I go 8 notes away from the Ionian, I land in the ocean, right? That's the thing that should be important, right? It's an 8. The 8-note away 6th will land me in the ocean from the Ionian. An 8-note away from the Ionian lands me in the ocean. 8-note away from the Aeolian lands me on a continent. All right, these are important directions if you don't want to be eaten. 7-note away, a 7th scale degree, which is a modal distance of 6, is the Ionian up by 6 to the Locrian. That's a 1-7 modal range. It's 6 modal half steps up, 7th scale degree, 11 note half steps up. We call that 11-note away major 7. I'd like to call it an 11-note away from the Ionian node 6th modal half step. Once again, the M isn't important. The 11 is important. 11 7th. It's an 11 7th, right? Not a major 7. 11th 7th. Okay, so if we go up from the Aeolian up by 6, we get to the Mixolydian. So it's a 6-5 modal range. It's going to be 6 clockwise steps up, 7th scale degree, and this only has 10. So that's why they call it a 10-note away minor 7. I'd rather call it a 10-note away 7th, right? Or more precisely, I'd rather call it a 10-note away from the Aeolian node this time, which is a 6th modal half step. Okay. So let me unhide these. I'm not just being picky either. This is important. You're confusing people. This is like trying to grow up when your mother's completely woke or something. You get all these weird names. It's like, no, you're confusing the child. Stop with you have to be, words should mean what reality has to be in the word. Let's unhide here. Okay. I don't know sorry, I got on a rant there. I'm back. Now we're gonna add the two other minor modes, but we're gonna put them in order after the Ionian here. So I'm gonna make some space to put them in order. So I'm gonna go from the R and I'm gonna go up through. Wait a sec. No, I'm gonna go after the Ionian from here. I'm gonna go from the Y, and we'll go up to the AP. Right click and insert. Boom. All right. So now let's copy just the Ionian bit from P to Y. Copy, and we'll paste that here. Bam. And then I'm going to make this one, let's make this one green. I'm going to have to recolor code it later maybe. And then that needs to be white, green and white, so it can see it. And this is going to be then equal to the Dorian. All right. So now we got the Dorian. I just need to change the start point to a 2, and everything should change automatically. So now we've got the Dorian. So does it look right? I'll add the next one, and then we'll go and do the comparison. So it has a DD, a DP, which is a 2.3, a DY is a 2.4, a DX is a 2.5, a DA is a 2.6, a DN is a 2.7, DI 2.1. I think it looks correct. We'll compare it in a second. All right, let's do the next one. So I'm going to copy the Ionian again. Copy it again. And then I'm going to paste it right here on the AH. Paste it. And so there we have it. Okay. And then I'm going to change the color on this one. Let's make this one the blue. Blue. And let's make it then equal to the Phrygian. The Phrygian. All right. And then I just need to change this starting point to the Phrygian number, which is number 3. And then everything should map out properly. Okay, so we have a PP, which is a 3.3, a PY, a 3.4, a 3.5, a 3.6, 3.7, 3.1. I think that's correct. So now, what I kind of want to do is be able to distinguish between the major modes and the minor modes. So this is the Ionian. So the Dorians, I'd like to make them maybe both the same color that are going to be, let's make them a shade of green. Let's make them like let's make them a lighter green like this maybe. And then I'll make this one a little bit lighter green to show it's a little different. That's too light. We'll do that. And then this one over here, I'll make the Aeolian the dark green. See if we can get a color scheme that works. And then the Ionian, let's make it like, I don't know, dark orange. Dark orange. Sounds like a comic book character or something. It's dark orange. Okay, and then we're going to say this is going to be, the Lydian will be a little less dark orange. And then the Mixolydian, maybe, now it's too light. It's too, you've gone too far. Maybe I can, it's not the same shade then. We need more color options. Let's make that black if we have to go with that one. That's the only option we have. Okay. So now we can see the color coding. Hopefully it makes some sense. Okay. So now let's compare the Aeolian. Let's compare the Aeolian to the Locrian and the Phrygian. So let's hide. That's the Lydian. Let's do one more before I finish this. Let's actually do the Locrian. So I'm going to copy this one more time, and we need to do the crazy Locrian. We'll put it at the end because it's the 7. Wait, let's not copy it like that. I got to copy it like this. Copy the whole thing. And then we'll put this over here. Crazy Locrian. And then we'll just change the name on that one. And then this is going to be Crazy Locrian. And I just need to change the number to a 7. And everything should populate properly. So there we have it. And then I'll color code the Locrian to, I don't know, yellow. Or red for the weird one. Dark red, maybe. Okay, let's do that. All right, so now let's compare. I'll keep the Ionian in play. Let's compare. Let's hide the Lydian and the Mixolydian. Let's hide those. So we have the Aeolian. Right-click, hide. So now we've got the Aeolian, the Dorian, and the Phrygian. Okay, so if we compare the Dorian, we're comparing mainly to the Aeolian, right? Let me see if I can make this a little smaller. So we're going to say it's going to be a DD modal range, which will be a 2-2. So that's going to be, if I don't move anywhere, 0 modal half steps. It's going to have a scale degree of 1. It's got a note half step of 0, 0 note away, perfect first, 0 note away from the Dorian mode, 0th modal half step is what I would like to call it. From the Phrygian, it would be a PP, which would be a 3-3, would be 0 notes away, first standard deviation, 0 half steps away, 0 note away, perfect first still, but I'd like to call it a 0 note away from the Phrygian node, 0th modal half step. From the AA, would be a 6-6, same thing. Perfect first, 0 note away from the Aeolian node, and the Locrian, which is similar to the minors, but it has a flat 5th, is the same. This time it would be an NN, which would be a 7-7, and it would be a perfect first, 0 note away from the Locrian node. All right, what if we go to the next one? Let's make this a little large. I could still make this a little larger without messing anything up, I think. And we'll just go through it line by line. So we'll say it's a DP modal range. So now we're going from a 2-3 modal range, which is a modal half step of 1, a scale degree of 2, a note half step of 2. So it's still a 2 note away major second, even though we're in the Dorian, which is a minor mode. And so that's the case with the Aeolian as well, the main major. And the modal distance, I'd like to call it a 2 note away from the Dorian node, first modal half step. From the Phrygian, though, if I go 1 step up from the Phrygian, modal half step, that's a Lydian, P to Y, which is a 3-4. So that's got a modal half step of 1, the scale degree is 2, but this time the note half steps are only 1. So this one is actually more minor than the main minor because it has a 1 note away minor second. But I'd rather know it as 1 note away, the weird thing, instead of 2 notes away. That's the half step. That's unusual when you look at the formula because it's whole, half, whole, half, right? There's only 2 half steps, and 1 is to get back home from the last step, right? So we call that I'd like to call it a 1 note away from the Phrygian node, first modal half step. From the Aeolian node, we're going from A, 1 modal half step to N. That's a 6-7 modal range. It's got 1 modal half step, scale degree is the second. It's got still a 2 note half step. So once again, the Phrygian is the oddball. The Phrygian has that very dissonancy sound 1 step away. So they call that a 2 note away major second, 2 note away from the Aeolian first modal half step. From the Locrian, it would be an NI modal range going 7 around the horn to 1. And this also has a weird one. It's a 1 note away first modal half step, second scale degree, and it is also a 1 note away note half step. So it's a 1 note away minor second, or a 1 note away from the Locrian first modal half step. So the Locrian is even more minor than the main minor. It's like the Phrygian, and it has a crazy flat 5 in it. All right, let's do the next one. If I go down, it would be a dy modal range. So that would be a 2-4 modal range, meaning we're going 2 modal half steps up, which would be the 3rd scale degree. It would be 3 note half steps, and that would be a 3 note away 3rd, so it's a 3 note away minor 3rd. I'd like to call it a 3 note away from the Dorian node 2nd modal half step. From the Phrygian, it's also going to be a minor 3rd, because the 3rd is the thing that differentiates if it's a minor scale, minor chord, minor mode, or a major. So it would be a PX modal range, Phrygian Mixolydian modal range. It would be 3-5 modal range. It's going to be 2 modal half steps up, 3rd scale degree, 3 notes up, 3 note away minor 3rd, which I would like to call a 3 note away from the Phrygian 2nd modal half step. From the Aeolian, it would be an AI modal range, 6-1 modal range, 2 modal half steps away, 3rd scale degree, 3 note half steps away, 3 note away minor 3rd, which I'd like to call a 3 note away Aeolian 2nd modal half step. From the Locrian, it would be an ND modal range, 7-2 modal range, going around in a clockwise direction. 2 modal half steps, 3rd scale degree. It would be 3 notes, so it also has a 3 note away minor 3rd, which is why the Locrian is kind of like a minor mode, although it's crazy. So it's a 3 note away Locrian 2nd modal half step. So that's going to be the same intervals across the board for the minors in Locrian. Then we have a DX modal range. That's a Dorian to the Mixolydian. It's a 2-5 modal range. That's going to be a distance of 3 modal half steps, 4th scale degree. It's got 5 notes away, and it's going to be called a 5 note away perfect 4th, and a 5 note away perfect 4th. So it's going to be a 5 note away Dorian 3rd modal half step is what I'd like to call it. From the Phrygian, it would be a PA modal range. It would be a 3-6 modal range, 3 modal half steps up, 4th scale degree, 5 notes away. It's a perfect 4th, so this you would think would flow through all the way through. It's only the Lydian, which is a major mode that doesn't have this distance of 5 that lands you on a continent. So it's a 5 note away perfect 4th. I'd like to call it a 5 note away from the Phrygian 3rd modal half step. From the Aeolian, AD, it'd be a 6-2, be a 3 modal half steps up, 4th scale degree. It's still 5 notes away, so it'd be a 5 note away perfect 4th. I'd like to call it a 5 note away from the Aeolian node 3rd modal half step. NP, 7-3 modal range. It's going to be the 3rd modal half step, 4th scale degree. It's also still, even the crazy Locrian has 5 notes away, landing you on a continent. So that's a 5 note away perfect 4th, or a 5 note away from the Locrian node 3rd modal half step. All right, let's go to the next one. Back to the Dorian. We're going to have a DA modal range, a 2-6 modal range, which is 4 modal half steps up, 5th scale degree. It's going to be a note distance of 7. We call that a 7 note away perfect 5th. The 7 is something that lands you on the continent almost all the time, except for crazy Locrian. I'd like to call it a 7 note away from the Dorian mode, 4th modal half step. From the Phrygian mode, it would be a PN modal range, which would be a 3-7 modal range, a modal half step distance of 4, scale degree 5th, 7 notes up, 7 note away perfect 5th. I'd like to call it a 7 note away from the Phrygian node, 4th modal half step. From the AP modal range, it would be a 6-3 modal range, modal half steps of 4, scale degree 5, notes away 7 again, 7 note away perfect 5th. I'd like to call it 7 notes away from the Aeolian node, 4th modal half step. From the Locrian, though, it would be an NY modal range. It would be a 7-4 modal range. It still has 4 modal half steps up, 5th scale degree, but it's only 6 notes up. That's the crazy distance. That's the crazy distance. I don't need to say it's a flat 5. I say it's 6. A distance of 6/5 is the crazy. The 6 isn't the thing, and there would be a 6 note away from the Locrian node 4th modal half step. So that's the super crazy one that just takes you over from the minor. You're no longer minor. You went too far. And now you've gone into crazy territory. So then we have the DN modal range, which is the 2-7 modal range. It would be a 5 note away, 5 modal half steps, 6 scale degree. it would be a distance of 9. Now that's weird. A distance of 9 from a minor mode, that's the distance on the major. So it's going to be a 9 note away major 6. This is where the Dorian is different. So it's got a different from the minors. So I would like to call that a 9 note away from the Dorian mode 5th modal half step. For the Phrygian, it's more minor. See, this is a major thing. It's like, dude, I thought you were down with the minors, and the Phrygian is like, dude, I got too close to the Locrian and it went too far, and I had to go back closer to the major. I've added a major mode. And then the Phrygian is like, dude, you could still be more minor than even the main minor without going crazy like Locrian. Just don't flap the 5 and you're good. So it's like it has a PI modal range. It's a 3-1 modal range. It's a 5 modal half step up, which is a 6 scale degree. It's going to still have the 8 note away. That's the minor distance. That's what true minor people do when they're on the 5th modal half step up or 6 scale degree. And that's going to be an 8 note away minor 6, which the 8 is the important thing, not the minor. So I'd like to call it an 8 note away from the Phrygian node 5th modal half step. From the AY modal range, it's a 6-4 modal range, 5 modal half steps up, 6 scale degree. Also, of course, 8 notes away, the minor distance. 8 note away minor 6, which I'd like to call an 8 note away from the Aeolian node 5th modal half step. In X modal range, it's going to be closer to the minor, you would think, right? Because it went all in on the minor, but then went crazy. 7-5. It's going to be a 5 modal half step up, 6 scale degree. Once again, 8 notes away instead of 9. 8 note away minor 6. So I would like to call it an 8 note away from the Locrian 5th modal half step. All right, one more time, one more round. We have then the DI modal range. The 2-1 modal range. It has a distance in the clockwise direction of 6 modal half steps. It would be the 7th scale degree, and it's 10 notes away. That's the minor distance. They all have a minor 7 for the minor modes. So that's going to be a 10 note away minor 7. The 10's important, not the minor. I'd like to call it just a 10th 7th. It's a 10 note away 7th, right? And then but I'd like to even be more specific, 10 note away from the Dorian node, 10 note away D 6th modal half step. PD modal range is going to be a 3-2 modal range, 6 modal half steps up, 7th scale degree, once again 10 notes up, so you can call that a 10 note away minor 7, a 10 note away 7th. Would you get rid of the minor? The minor is not helpful. It's a 10 note away from the Phrygian node 6th modal half step. An AX modal range, an Aeolian Mixolydian modal range is a 6-5 modal range. It's going to be 6 modal half steps up, 7th scale degree, 10 notes away. Call that a 10 note away minor 7 or a 10 note away 7th. Minor's lame. If you have the 10, you don't need the minor, and the 10's better than the minor, so get rid of the minor and add the 10. 10 note away Aeolian 6th modal half step. We've got an AN, Locrian Aeolian. That's a 7-6 modal range. 6 modal half steps up, 7 scale degree. Also, the crazy Locrian has the minor distance of a 10 note away minor 7, 10 note away 7th, 10 note away from the Locrian node 6th modal half step. All right, let's unhide everything here. I think everything looks correct for the most part. So right click, we'll unhide. And we have this worksheet. And again, you can hide anything you want. Now, I'm going to put on top of this now so that the I will follow through all the way across. I'm going to put up here that this is going to be equal to the I. And then this is going to be equal to that I. Or maybe I'll do it this way. I'll double click in here and say F4 on the keyboard. And I'll copy that across this way. And then, then I'll format paint this up here so that now when you hide everything, you'll always have the I, whichever column you're looking at, you'll have the I on top. And so this is going to be the D, and I'll format paint that, F4, or not format paint it, I'll absolute it, and then format paint it, copy it across, and now the D, let's center it. And then we'll do the same thing here. This is going to be the P, F4, format paint it, copy it across. And then this is going to be the Y, and then F4, and then format paint it. and then copy it across. And then this is going to be equal to the X, F4, format paint it. Format paint it. I said my cursor's, I made it too big so it like doesn't actually, oh wait a sec. And then let's do the Aeolian. This is going to equal the Aeolian, F4, format paint it, copy it across, and finally the Locrian is going to be here, double clicking F4, format paint it, boom, copy it across. So now we can hide whatever we want column wise and then still have the color coded up top so that we can see what we're all the different modes from that top column. All right. So next time we'll continue in the negative direction, adding that bit, or counterclockwise, whatever you want, however you want to see it.